Okay, guys, hello there. Welcome again to this afternoon session. Spotlight here with the guys Danny and Jack from Agent Extra. Hello, guys.
Hello. Hello, very well. How are you?
Nice, colour coordinated. I like to see you had that phone call. What are you wearing? David, we never have that problem, do we?
No, I dress in grown-up clothes. You wear pajamas, so we're cool.
I'm certainly not standing up. I'm telling you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, thanks very much, first of all, for coming on. So, for those people that don't know, would you mind just giving us a bit of background about the services that you actually provide for agents, just to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a prospecting and lead generation company for wholly for estate agents. So everything we do is about getting new valuations in the diary and new instructions. We have two services. One is we use your historical old database, and a member of our team, which is an ex-property professional, will ring up contacts in there on your behalf as if they're sat in your office, make hundreds of phone calls. And the idea is to find people in there who are looking to move house and then book you back in to either go and see them, do a virtual valuation, or just get on the phone to them if that's all it takes. The rest of the people go in the pipeline. The other service is digital. So we generate new vendor and landlord inquiries through targeted social media adverts, where we get people to make inquiries through lead forms, valuation tools, whilst also promoting your service.
Okay, I'm in. Where do I? No, it's going to be harder than that. It's going to be harder than that. Okay, sounds great. And obviously, we're going to just dip into that in a bit more detail. I suppose the obvious one is, where did the idea come from?
So both Danny and I, our background is working for estate agents. We both used to work at Countrywide together for a London brand, and we were on what was called their client services team, which is basically a group of people sat in their head office whose only job it is to ring up old contacts in the database and basically do what I just said we do now, and fill diaries up for their local officers. And the idea came from that. There's the independent and franchise estate agents, who are our core client base, don't have a big head office feeding them valuation appointments. It's very much up to them, which is great. But if we can add an extra 10 appointments or 20 appointments a month on top of that, it's more instructions, it's more deals. So that's the idea, it's kind of feeding.
You're Josh Fegan in a box for a business, aren't you, really? It's like Josh, very well known, obviously, for his prospecting side of things. And I always talk about Josh because, of course, Josh came over not too many moons ago and started telling everyone about the importance of prospecting, and everyone was like, wow, that's amazing. But, I mean, it shouldn't have been that obvious, should it, that we should be having dedicated certainly time, and the larger businesses dedicated even teams to doing this. But I think one of the problems why I like solutions like what you're talking about is it's easy to prospect when you're quiet, isn't it? But when you actually start getting busy, that can quite easily fall to the back of the queue. So it tends to end, as there's always a lag, it tends to mean it's feast or famine, isn't it? And that's why that element you're talking about there, and as we know, consistency is one of the key things as well. So that for me feels like a really important factor in what you have to offer. Is that what I'm assuming that is, but is that what your clients feel is the key thing for you?
Yeah. Sorry, you go, Danny, you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you find in a lot of offices, especially ones worked with in the past, it's like you said, when things are quiet, you've got that time to do the prospecting. But when things are busy and flowing, I mean, our only role is to do the prospecting. So we don't get distracted with nipping out for a viewing or things like this. And I think that's what keeps keeping it consistent and keeping in touch with people. It helps get market appraised and turn into instructions.
I think David gets distracted because he pops out for a Greg's when he's allowed.
By the way, if I look like I'm distracted, I'm just doing some real work here in the background. I tell you what, one of the guys that I used to work for years ago always described the estate agency as, it's obviously very process driven, but he described it like a sausage factory. You've got to keep putting in the meat on one end to be able to churn the sausages out on the other end. And because when we're estate agents, they're a worst enemy to themselves, basically. When they are busy, they forget about the need to keep shoving it in the other end and keep that machine going. And so I think if you've got somebody who is routinely overlooking your data, using that and then prospecting, then it will take away that need for you to really sort of be on top of that process.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really clever tools out there that can allow you to stay in touch with people on autopilot, on mass, at good, but I don't think there's much better than a good quality phone call to someone at the right time and setting people up for the future. If you say you're going to call someone back in 6 months because they're going to move, and then you call them back up again, I don't think emails beat that. So that's very much, it's.
I struggle to call people back in 10 minutes time when I say I will do. So 6 months would be great.
And I think culture's changed. I think when I first started doing this kind of job in 2006, every agent was calling their data. The common complaint was, you estate agents, you're always calling me up. And now I think it's the opposite. I don't think estate agents do call their contacts anymore. And I think if there is an agent who is prospecting to their database in that manner, I think that's going to put them above the rest, very simply.
And it's something that it's got to be done religiously. It's got to be done routinely, and you won't see results unless you keep up with that consistency, presumably.
Yeah, I mean, and anyone can do it. I see a lot of people on social media a lot of the time. They could be on the phone, but for those that want to be on social media,
Was that sliding at David there? David,
the two things are not mutually exclusive. I can do both. It's fine.
It really resonates for me. People can be, they can be keyboard warriors on social, can't they? And then almost bizarrely, almost feel terrified of the phone. They just, that fear of rejection, although it should be an absolutely standard part of our job, is very real in many businesses, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if you look at other industries as well, for instance, one that strikes out to me is storage space units. If you make an inquiry through to a storage space unit, you'll get a phone call within minutes from them every time, because it's all about filling space. And I don't know, estate agency in some areas, the phone call side has kind of not been there. Hence why we do it.
Some of my fans are writing in already.
Yeah. Is that showing? Are you working on the scarcity principle? When you get a phone call from David Mintz, it really matters.
I think so. Outbound calls, they mean something in this industry. So on that note, so when you let's just say in fact, Jack, we discussed this only a few minutes ago, but I'm going to be used as a guinea pig, and I'm going to be handing over my client data to you so that you can make those calls. Is that done on an entirely sort of white label basis? So when you call them, are you calling as Jack from Normie and Company? How does it work?
I'll let Danny can take this one.
Yeah, absolutely. We always call from the agency we're working from. As far as anyone's concerned, we're a part of that team, and in fact, we're sat in that same office. It's always been important for us that we want to feel that we're a part of the team. We get a lot of information from you beforehand. There's no point me calling up everyone in your database. Do you want a valuation? Sure. Some people might say yes, but a lot of people we know. One thing we want to find out, I always say to the guys, and ever since I talked years ago, is go in and make a friend. So if I'm calling from the database, I'm having a chat with them, finding out about their property, but also I want to let them know what you guys are selling, what you guys are letting as well, because I think that's how you build your relationships. And I think it's important that we're all part of the same. Well, if we're coming across as the same brand, I don't think it'll be good if I was calling from Agent Extra, booking a valuation for someone else. As such, so.
And so in terms of booking those appointments, do you have access to our diary? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends on how you want to work. We are flexible, but not normally. Yes, we do have access to your diary, and we'll chat with you beforehand. When works best for you? Some people only like valuations in the afternoon or morning, vice versa, whatever it may be, and we're flexible to you really.
I mean, normally, if you use, I don't know, Dupix, Repit, Expert Agent, whatever CRM you're on, the idea is you would set us up as a user, as if we're part of your team. Essentially, we're just not sat in your office. So we would call someone up, leave notes on that file, set callback dates, and use the diary in your CRM.
Okay.
That's great. So one of the things that a lot of people have had experience is using using telemarketers or whatever else is that, you do it via spreadsheets and then you've got to rekey the information in, and it doesn't happen. And so to have that, it's going into the source of truth straight away, isn't it? That's really important.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the idea is it's seamless. You receive an email from us and a phone call when we book a juicy appointment for you. You see it in your diary. The idea is it's frictionless, and you just attend the appointments and take on the properties.
And looking at the really boring legal side of things, is it all GDPR compliant? That approach in terms of there, I'm guessing, because the data is still their own, it's on their own premises. There's no issue there, is there?
Absolutely. So we have our own NDA, which you sign. We would look at any NDA that you want us to sign. But essentially, the data is yours. You keep the data. We're simply using it as a member of your team, as if you hired someone yourself to call it. We are performing that function from you. And the other point, which is key, I think, is we're only calling people about what they were initially in touch with you about in the first place. So we're not calling tenants trying to sell the mortgages. We are calling people who have had valuations from you in the past, re-engaging with them about that valuation and asking about their plans for the future regarding that property. So it's all in accordance. Absolutely.
Cool. And how does your team work in terms of, are they having ostensibly natural conversations or are they scripted? How much I mean, it's nice to have some sort of scripts, but sometimes they can feel a bit sort of too formulaic, a bit sort of artificial. So what's your kind of policy on that? What works for you guys?
I think with that, I mean, you're scripted as much as when you call up and say where you're calling from. But I think from that, the main thing that I believe is we're going from the previous notes. We're getting back in touch with them, and it's having a chat with them in regard to their property. I see that last time we were speaking to you in regard to you were doing a conservatory, and you always use. I think the script is using the information that is the notes. So it's building that relationship. It would be completely different if it was a cold call, but no, it is just following on from the last call and keeping that relationship going.
And how far, in terms of sort of warm leads versus cold leads, how far do you advise going back? So if I were to say to you, is it 12 months? Will people still want to call after 2 years? What's your experience?
My experience is we will call anyone who lives in your area that you've dealt with in the past. I mean, sure, if a lead is from 4 or 5 years ago, they might have moved since, but they still might live in the area. They might be on their third property now. They might have acquired a buy-to-let property. The thing that I like to do is not set the agenda on the call. Is ask a lot of questions. We were in touch with you then. I'm getting back in touch with you because of this. I'm interested to know what, if you're still living locally and what your possible plans are. And then the conversation literally goes from what they want to talk about. And the one question we always ask, which you'd be amazed how many more instructions we get, is, do you own any other properties? If you don't ask that question, people don't always volunteer it. And it's so easy.
You often hear those stories, don't you, of the person that gets the landlord who you hit almost like the bonanza thing, don't you? It just happens to have.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's incredible, isn't it? And but the thing is, I hear those often enough that that it's not just 1 in a million chance, is there? There are so many of these ones out there, and it's the old thing: if you don't buy the ticket, you don't stand a chance of winning. Just making sure I think Stephen Brown calls it. Isn't it the property empire kind of question?
Yeah, he has a standard property empire question. Is this property your only property? Or is it part of a larger property empire? And the idea of putting it in those terms is that they're going to laugh. Because it sounds a little bit ridiculous, but it's a conversation opener, and everybody always answers that question. I've used it on taxi drivers, anybody who just wants to talk about property. If you ask them about their house, they're more than happy to tell you what they own and what they don't.
Everyone's favorite topic.
Yeah, that's great. So, without feeling like I'm going straight for the money shot here, what does your sort of standard client, typical client, what can they expect to see in terms of actual results in a month?
So the first thing we do, we always guarantee a number of evaluations we're going to get from them for a month. So the first thing we'll do, we'll take a look at their database, and we'll then make a judgment of kind of how many MAs we think we can get. So most people normally go for 10 on average. That's a normal number, but we've had some clients with a smaller database will aim for 5, and some with the largest will go for as many as 20 valuations.
Yeah, okay. I mean, just able to do that literally on the basis of, like, if they have 10,000 contacts in there, 1,000 previous clients, you can actually draw a I'll pretend that it's AI or machine learning. You're able to estimate it pretty well from that. I mean, those figures.
We can have an idea, but again, we do a day's trial beforehand, so we're happy to have a quick look and have a chat. So this way, when we can kind of gauge it on this way, on this front as well. Actually digging into it, because sometimes I spoke to some people that have thousands of leads, but then they're all dead numbers from 10 years ago. Some with a smaller database with the bigger pot. So it is a matter of getting on the phone to realizing.
The only thing you need to have is, if the numbers ring and it goes through to the right person, the data's good. It really doesn't matter how many different properties or what the situation is. If the numbers work and we can get through to people, you have to call a certain amount of people to get results. It's very old school methodology, but it's the truth. You call enough of the right people in the right area, you will come across people who have properties to sell and let, if you know how to ask the right questions.
So a lot of agents have these automated valuation widgets on their website, and that effectively is a data capture tool. But you are talking to people that are curious about the value of their home. That's how this whole conversation gets started. But in my experience, I've seen agents, and I've seen some of my own agents, I must tell you, completely fudge that conversation with the person. So they call up and they go, "Oh, I see you clicked on the automated valuation. Are you interested in selling a house? No, you're not. Okay, goodbye." And that's the end of it. Whereas it needs to be a little bit more of a nurturing thing. So if I were to say to you, look, I've got 100 automated valuation leads, I'm presuming you guys could handle that as well, could you not?
Stanley's speciality, these calls.
Oh,
yeah, I've done a fair bit of practice on these types of calls. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, like Jack said, if the numbers there,
it's on its way to you now, sir.
Right. But yeah, absolutely. Look, if there's 9 out of 10 times, if you call up a valuation lead, no one goes onto Facebook or any of these things looking to sell their house. Yeah. You've just caught their attention. They are curious. It's now knowing that, I think the main thing with this, you may get one in 100 that will book a valuation straight away, but you want to get a call back. That's the most important thing. You want to have the opportunity, find out, get a vague idea when they're looking to do something, and then be that person to make sure you do call them back. Yeah. I know from years ago, agents will always say, "Oh, I'll call you back in 3 months because the conservative done." How many people actually do it? I know a lot more people forget than actually do it. So I think
there are some
positive. It just doesn't happen.
There are some scary statistics that I won't make up the number, but about how few actual vendors go back to the actual previous agent they sold with. Shows just how bad, obviously, the experience and the nurturing it currently is, isn't it? It's because there's so many years between that. We just expect them to remember the agency that they kind of did business with, but it's like, that's why they are always, so many agents are just fighting over the right move leads, aren't they? And you're not creating any trust. There's no real brand recognition. Whereas if they're using a service like this, or even, let's be honest, doing it themselves, you know, you're going to be the first person that they think about, aren't you, when they come to think about selling, just because you've been proactive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we try and speak to them every. It depends, but I'd say normally 3 to 6 months, depending on their situation. That's kind of in my mind. That's a good time. At least every 3 months. But again, if they're not moving for so long, I'll call them later on. But because we speak to our clients a lot and we put so many notes, I've got an idea before when they're looking to do something. So before they get the opportunity to just Google a new agent, we're already on their minds, as we've already spoken to them a few times down the road. I think that's a big part. It's relationship building.
And you're talking there about the about obviously working with databases.
Yeah.
Does that mean that it's difficult? I mean, it's obviously more difficult, but can you not work with people, for example, like startups, or do you have a different approach with startups? I mean, obviously you could do the leads nurturing element there, but is it hard? I mean, you can't obviously prospect against a database not there, but what do you do with those guys that either the data's they've got too small a database? The data quality quite often will be crap as well, won't it? Which again is, you know, one of the big challenges. How do you help those people out?
So when we started Agent Extra, we only did the phone calls. That was the one service. That was the thing that we believed in that we were going to do. But I kept talking to estate agents who would call us up and, hey, this sounds great. You can get us 10 valuations, but I don't have a database. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I can't do much there. So I started looking into how can we generate high numbers of new leads, and basically, if someone doesn't have a database, and this is why we now do targeted social media adverts. I think you can get high numbers of new contact details of vendors and landlords in your area. They might not necessarily be at the point of instructing you at the point they make the inquiry, but if you've got a sort of 6-month time frame in your mind, and you're talking to 10 new people a day, you'll end up getting multiple instructions if you keep in touch with people. So targeted social media adverts is what we do for people that don't have databases.
I agree with that. The ROI on targeted social media ads is if you can handle the leads properly, it's phenomenal. And what we found was that I remember the first time we got the automated valuation tool, and this is, I don't know, 3 years ago, whenever they first came out. And we were told, oh, just stick it on bank holiday weekend when people have got time to click on these things. Stick a $5 behind it on Facebook and see what happens. And we were amazed. But then you wake up on Tuesday, you've suddenly got 35 leads you need to call. And those calls, even though you're an agent and you've been doing this for years, I don't know why, but my guys find them difficult to do. Because prospecting is sometimes it's an art, isn't it?
There's no instant reward on those phone calls. If you're going in there trying to get 3 instructions in the morning, it's not going to happen. And the mindset, particularly for negotiators who they're salespeople, they want to do sales, and if they spend the morning calling people who don't want to sell their house, it's demoralizing. So it's very much the approach of the call, the mindset, the long-term view. And like Danny said, we're not trying to book valuations on those phone calls. We're just trying to get them to agree for us to call them back in the future and find out why they might move. And that's it. And then you stay in touch with them.
Yeah. Fantastic. So go on, Sam.
In terms of those social media, so you totally set that up for your agency client, do you? And so do you pass on the cost of the adverts to the agent? Do they have to pay you for that, or is that included within the monthly subscriptions?
Yeah, so monthly subscription is it's our fee plus ad spend.
Okay.
Most areas we operate in, and literally 95% of all campaigns, £5 a day is enough to get leads. I think we average about 70 new inquiries a month on £5 per day. You're welcome to put more on, but a lot of agents, that's enough.
That's phenomenal. That sounds like, I mean, as ever, it's about the quality of the leads, isn't it? But that sounds like phenomenally good value to me.
I agree. I think so. I think when you match it against other things, what it used to cost to send out letters, and then you kind of rely on someone to call you, and the amount of inquiries you get back from it, I don't think there's many other.
It's so much better than leafleting. which is where agents used to throw so much money away.
Yeah.
David, do you find this is for all of you, by the way, but as our resident agent, my understanding is that Facebook demographic or social in general is a very different audience to those leads that come from the portals. Is that what do you find that in effect? That it's you're not duplicating, are you?
You're not duplicating, because I think portal leads are people that are dedicated to finding themselves a house, or they're just really nosy. But by and large, anybody that is driven to find themselves a house, they'll be on Rightmove, they'll be on Zoopla, on the market. Other portals are available, so that they'll be out there and they'll be looking at those. But I think the old newspaper crowd. So when you used to have there used to be a free newspaper that used to go door to door in most areas. And about 5 years ago, these newspapers started to fold. But those newspapers weren't massively journalistic in terms of quality, weren't amazing. But people always used to love the property section because, as Jack said earlier, it's one of our obsessions. We love to talk about how much houses may be worth and what's happening. But the audience there is very passive, and they are people that can look at an advert and say, "Oh, I might be interested in that. Can I have some more details?" And they will swear blind that they are absolutely never going to buy another house, but they just want to see what the details on that one is. And lo and behold, they're unpacking boxes in that house 3 months later. So so many conversations happen with what I would say passive buyers, people that they're transient, that came across a post that piqued their interest. So yes, that Facebook audience is where that newspaper audience is today. It doesn't cost them anything to look at your advert, but once they look at it, you've got a really good chance of enticing them to go further.
Yeah, and on the cost, as much as people will mark us against how much did you cost and how many leads did I get. Those are the metrics people look at. The amount of exposure that these kind of adverts get is nuts. And if you're putting messages in them, you're talking about properties that you've sold quickly, properties that you've let at asking price, and in a month on £5 a day, over 20,000 people are seeing it. Again, the cost per reach is I don't think there's other things that come close to it.
No, 100%. And again, it's in as much as you're trying to sell a property, what you're also doing at the same time, it's brand recognition. You're just constantly broadcasting that element of your brand and getting that in front of people. So even if they're not selling today, when they do come to sell, hopefully they're going to think about you.
Totally.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
I'm becoming interested by that, and I can understand that challenge you had at the initial stage where you had to obviously develop what beyond just being the phone service. Are you able to quantify at all how much more effective the cold calling, the prospecting calls are when they've been warmed up by the other methods, the digital methods that you use?
I think, I'm sure Danny's got an opinion, but I think our hit rate for calling someone up without having spoken to them before and booking a valuation is higher on existing data than it is for the valuation lead data. Again, because those inquiries are very top of the funnel, which means they've made an inquiry because we asked them to get a free instant valuation on their property. It's very different to someone who's already had a couple of visits from a manager or bought a property through you and has spoken to someone last month that they might move again. So I don't know what you tell me, Danny.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think you always do. I get a better conversion anyway when I'm calling through the database. Because like Jack said, with the valuation tools, like you are catching them when they are curious. So like I said, at the top of the funnel, and it is a nurture program. You've got their interest, and then it's down to you as an agent to stay in touch with them, so when they are considering. They are curious now, but are they always going to be curious? There will be a point when they're not, so you've got to stay in touch with them for them. But in terms of booking straight value, I do think you get more from the database. The Facebook is a bit of a longer game, but it's a game that still pays off.
The Facebook stuff will feed into the database and become a warm lead over time. That's the point. You're putting it in one end of the sausage, and then tying it up at
We
the
like
end.
that analogy, don't
Don't worry, guys, you're on the right show.
Well,
Magic guys, thank you very much,
All right.
Danny, Jack, David. Thank you for all the time today. Brilliant. Cheers. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Okay, guys. Bye-bye.